All right, so next up we got this orange cube. Um, it's like I probably spent an hour painting it and speeding up the footage to be about 15 to 20 minutes. This one, there's a few new techniques I use in here, so I'll make sure to point those out when we get there. And as always, let me know if you have questions, and I hope this helps you out. So let's get going. So let's go. There we go. Start off with my demo cube or my template cube. I'm going to do the local color. This way, I'm actually not using a color layer. I'm doing the hue saturation, where if you hit Control U, it'll pull this up. And if you notice, I'm just blasting the saturation. I set it to colorize and made it this orange color. And I did this, this video was recorded while I was teaching, so this might be me explaining that, why there's such a lag there. So, you know, after you set your local color, the next thing you do is you set up the drawing. So in this one, I'm adjusting the contours of this first. So made a mask on the cube, making these edges a little bit more round. And it's important I do this step now, and you'll see why in a little bit. So, and I'm not forgetting about that inside corner on the top there too. I'm making that round. And I applied that mask, so what I'm doing now is I'm setting up the shape of the rind and these sections on the top. So I made a selection using the magic wand tool, and I contracted it by 25. And what I'm trying to do now is get this white rind sort of border along the outside. And this is why it was so important to have rounded edges to start off with, because I don't want these to be super pointy edges. It won't look natural. So what I did there, I contracted it originally so that there'd be this rind, the orange border, and I contracted that same selection again by 25. So now there's going to be this white, not white, it's like I don't know, 10% white with a little bit of orange color in it. Looks a little bit more natural that way. But so I contracted that. Now I filled it with orange. So I've got this like nice clean border here. And I'm using the line tool, which if you don't see it, it should be under shapes. Just right click your shape tool over here. And I set that to pixels. The weight is 5. So it's very important that you set it to pixels and not shape. And I'm just drawing sort of like a little pie chart from the center there. And okay, well, so I take that back. I did it with a, I redid it and made the weight of it 19 pixels instead of 5. So it's a little bit more substantial. And I'm using a guide just so that I can make sure that this is subdivided equally. If you want to make a guide, all you got to do is hit Control R if you don't see the ruler up here, and then you just pull down either from the top or from the side, and it'll do a vertical or horizontal guide. And I'm just trying to make it, you know, it's not perfectly subdivided, but I'm trying to make it as close to perfect as possible. And that's on a layer on top of everything, so I can keep messing with it if I want. And so now I'm taking an overlay layer and using the main dude brush with a medium dark that's got a little bit of orange in it too. but I'm just drawing towards the center, drawing these lines, so it's kind of getting the flesh of the orange. So mixing between light and dark for this. Using a big soft brush to get it along the outside and in the center there. Now I'm going on top. I made a new layer on top of the rind that I did, the geometric shape. So that way I can make it a little bit more organic, right? The edges are getting lost. It's not perfect. And if you notice, I'm always working from the center out. Trying to keep the direction as consistent as possible. And I'm coming in using a really bright to get sort of these juicy highlights that are happening here with my main dude brush, going from the center out. If you notice, it's not 100% white either. It's 100% brightness, but it's got some orange tint to it. And if you look, it's not the cleanest painting. I am not the cleanest painter, but I try to make it appear that I am when you zoom out on it. It's really important too that there's like a mix of opacity. So my brush is at 100% opacity, 100% flow, which is normally what I work at. It's just how hard I'm pushing on my tablet. Having a little issue with the music. Maybe that's related to my internet. So now I'm coming through and breaking up the edge along here, just sort of like based on my reference. And I'm just sort of stippling with the main dude brush, just tapping. This is a normal layer. Just reinforcing those lights and darks. So just like my other cubes, I always try to get, I try not to jump between the different sides. I'm trying to establish this top, and then I'll move from there. And also, you'll notice too, just like with the meat cube, I'm using really saturated colors. If you use desaturated colors, like if it was over here for the darks, it would look like the fruit's bad. It would look like it's gone rotten. So when you're painting food, you always want to try to keep things as saturated as possible. I mean, obviously like the rind won't be super saturated, but it's still not 100% desaturated also. Hopefully that makes sense. And so I went back to the rind, the geometric pie shape layer, and I'm just hitting it with the gradient tool set to foreground to transparent, and I'm sort of pushing it so that it's not this consistent color throughout. A little bit darker over here, the light's getting stronger over here, that kind of thing. All right, so now we're gonna do the skin of the orange. And you notice it's actually a lot like human skin. It's got kind of pores and things like that. So this is actually kind of helpful for when you start painting people. And I actually have a skin pore brush in my brush set. So what I'm doing is I selected my shadow color just by Alt over there and push that, use a really big brush, and I'm pushing it into there. Sort of on the mid-tone side, the lighter side, I used the shadow to put that in there, and then on the shadow side I actually took some of the mid-tone side and put that in there. I am going to make the shadow side darker again, but that's how I did that. And now I reduced the size of the brush and am putting that back on top of it. So I'm using multiple sizes of this same brush to kind of get complicated pore kind of feeling, get that texture of an orange peel. So I want to get that reflection on there, just like in my reference. And so I'm picking a bright with a little bit of blue in it. Because it's so orange, a little bit of cool color mixed in with your highlight will really make it stand out, feel realistic. Yeah, this skin pore brush is very helpful for this one. You just don't want to overdo it. You want to make sure that you keep that shape. So if you notice in the reflection on the side of this orange, it's getting pretty bright. Well, not bright as much as it is saturated. So I'm doing the reflected light very saturated, not super bright. It's still lower in value, but I'm doing that on a layer on top of the skin, the rind layer, the skin, the peel skin. I don't know, whatever. Using my main dude brush, big and soft. And so just like with everything, when you use a pattern brush, you want to come back in and paint with a sort of a normal brush so it doesn't just look like a pattern brush. So on this highlight, I used the main dude brush with big soft edges. Now I'm pushing it much darker, but still very saturated on the shadow side. Using the overlay layer to get that brightness on the top. Make sure that that light source is hitting the top. And erasing out a little bit from that light too, so it feels like there's layers to it. Just adds more to it, I feel. Big soft brush. And I'm kind of doing just a little bit of scribbling, still in the direction of the center, but I'm trying to get that flesh feeling that's happening on this orange over here. And it might be where I'm talking to somebody right now. Okay. Yeah, I'm explaining the shadow side. I don't know. Yeah, you know what? That's just lost to time. I'm not exactly sure what I was explaining right there. So now I've got the screen layer again, just like with the meat cube. I'm gonna hit it with a bright with a little bit of blue, so it gets that glossy, sort of juicy feeling on the top. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it up close, it looks real scribbly, but that's the whole idea, is I'm not trying to make people see it at 100%. A bit of an overlay layer, pushing that. To get this sort of layered look, it's using multiple layers. I use a combination of multiply, screen, overlay, all that kind of stuff. So now I'm doing my shadow trick again. Where I, just to reiterate, in case you have forgotten, you hold Control and click your cube layer at the bottom of all your clipping masks. Make a new layer underneath, so that way when you hit Control in that, it'll make a selection. And then I feathered that selection by going Select Feather, filled it with black, and then erased everything but this bottom edge. Then reduce the opacity of that shadow layer to 40%. And then made a smart object out of it. And booyaka, we got that orange. So yeah, let me know if you have questions on this one. Kind of rushed through, but I think the big things to keep in mind is that you just want it to be really saturated. You want to establish, you know, the right pattern on the top from the get-go, and you want to just make sure that the different textures are represented, like the feeling of the skin versus the feeling of the actual flesh of the orange. Cool. Let's use code word Orange Julius. Let me know if this helps you or if you have questions. All right, thanks.